Hello and welcome to a thought for the day on a really beautiful sunny day with blue skies. I do hope it stays. This morning I'm going to reflect upon a passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 1 to 14, which is a parable all about the great wedding banquet. Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle have been butchered and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized the servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burnt their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out to the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came to see the guests, he noticed a man who was there not wearing wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?' And the man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants, 'Tie him hand and foot, and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen.'" I don't know about you, but I find this a pretty challenging passage, perhaps one that we don't like to hear very much. And that's probably because we need to hold the concepts of inclusion and exclusion together, and that's really difficult. It's a parable or a story all about the coming of God's kingdom, particularly about the arrival of the Messiah, and it's all about a party which is thrown to celebrate the Son coming, and it's a party which we are all invited to. So the first people to have been invited were the leaders of the local Jewish community of the time and those who had been following Jesus. All those people had been invited, but when the party was ready, nobody wanted to come. Of course, the wonderfully inclusive part of this parable is that the invitations go out then to all people on the street corners, all those who perhaps had felt outsiders, those who thought they had been forgotten. All the riffraff had been invited, the blind, the lame, those who had been forgotten, those who did not feel worthy to be invited. They were all invited to the wedding celebration. But at the end of the parable, we might be shocked to hear of this poor man who was confronted about what he was wearing. He wasn't wearing the wedding clothes, so he was chucked out. That's a difficult few verses at the end of the passage. But we need to know that the wedding clothes are not literal clothes, because we might have been thinking, well, how come everyone else has got time to go home and find some fancy clothes to put on when this poor man didn't, when it appeared that everybody was swept up, brought to the party quite quickly. So these are not literal wedding clothes, they are metaphorical wedding clothes. And metaphorically, the wedding clothes are clothes of love, of justice, of joy, of truth, and of holiness. And what the parable is saying, that if we choose in our earthly lives not to put on these wedding clothes, then in effect we're choosing not to stay at this banquet in heaven. But the second bit of really good news is that Jesus is here now to help us to choose to put on these wedding clothes. And we'll be familiar with the many, many stories of transformation throughout the Gospels. Jesus heals the people who are physically unwell. He heals the blind, the lame, and he transforms their lives. But he also heals and transforms the hearts of many other people, people who perhaps lead lives which their behaviour may be considered sinful, people who perhaps led dishonest lives and who had wrong, selfish motives. Jesus transforms these people. They follow him, they walk a new path, and they put on the clothes of love, justice, truth, hope. These are the special wedding clothes that we need to be wearing. And so Jesus encourages us all to turn a new way, to follow him, and to put on these correct wedding clothes. So yes, certainly we are all invited to Jesus' heavenly wedding party, but ultimately it's our choice on earth as to whether or not we want to choose to turn a new way, to follow him, and to put on these clothes of love, justice, truth, faithfulness. It's certainly a really challenging passage, but a great one to think about. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. God bless you.